The Brooding Mawlek. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, the False Knight bio ended up being like twice as long as I intended it to be, so I'm gonna try and keep this one pretty streamlined. Luckily, the Mawlek is pretty straightforward. Almost no new or super unique mechanics to explain here. The only thing I'll preface with is that this boss assumes you either have the majority of the game's movement abilities or a mastery of the nail pogo. Having both would be ideal, but I'm gonna have to rely on the pogo. So let's delve in. Mawlek has 3 attacks up its sleeves: the Swats and Splats, the Double Slam, and the Splat Volley. The first one is a little interesting. As long as you keep your distance, this attack will only take the form of these projectiles, 3 or 4 launched into the air semi-randomly towards the knight. I'll go ahead and say up front that the nature of this attack makes nail pogoing a bad idea in the majority of this fight. That covers the splats. What about those swats? This is an interesting case of a boss's behavior reacting directly to the actions of a player. During this attack, and this attack only, the Mawlek will swipe at you with its talons only when the knight is close enough. The fact that this is basically 2 attacks happening at once from different angles can certainly make things difficult. But the fact that the talon swipes are completely within your control essentially makes up for that. That, and the orange globs are so small that you'll dodge most of them by accident. My recommendation is to simply get in, land 1 attack, and retreat. Don't get greedy trying to wail on him, or his talons will make short work of you. There are other options, however. One option is to play it overly safe. Just focus on dodging the splats, and don't worry about getting the damage in while Mawlek does this attack. Wait for opportunities elsewhere. Be prepared for a long fight if you take this approach though. The splats and swats are essentially Mawlek's default state, so you'll be seeing this attack much more than the other 2. Your other option is one I'm only mentioning because it's possible, not because it's reasonable. It's time to talk about Hollow Knight's parrying mechanic. When fighting against any opponent that wields a blade, there is an extremely tight window during their slash attacks where you can strike their blade with your nail, and in doing so, reduce their hitbox. Not remove the hitbox, but definitely make it smaller. The Mawlek's talons count as blades for the purposes of the parry, and with proper timing, you can be a little more aggressive by using parries to keep from having to retreat from every single swipe. I don't recommend this at all, but I did want to bring attention to it. Who knows, it might get you out of a tight spot. His second attack is the Double Slam. This one's as simple as can be. He'll perform 2 jumps in a row, the first one targeting the knight's position from when the attack began, and the second returning him to the center of the arena. This is normally where I'd say that it's tempting to dodge away from the center of the screen, but you should really dodge underneath the attack, but not this time. Since he immediately retreats back to his perch, dodging left or right is about equally safe. This attack is also your best opportunity to heal. The time it takes for him to make his second jump and start the next attack is more than enough time for you to restore a mask, or even 2. While we're on the subject, do not try and heal during the swats and splats. It may seem like you have a safe window, but trust me, you'll probably just end up losing more masks than you restore. Now on to his final attack, the Splat Volley. This one is what really makes this fight difficult for newer players. After winding up for a moment, the Mawlek will launch a blanket of orange blobs in the direction the knight was in when the windup began. These blobs are more than capable of covering the entire distance between the Mawlek and the wall. It is just the least bit random though. Occasionally, it'll leave gaps that can be slipped through, or firing at a sharp enough angle that the outside edge is just barely safe. Do not rely on this. The only reliable way to dodge this attack is to get to the other side of the Mawlek. It's a little precise, but the monster is actually small enough that he can be cleared in a single jump. But this is definitely the nail pogo's time to shine. Simply bounce across his mouth to safety and you'll be completely fine. The cooldown on this attack is also pretty significant, so you'll want to take advantage of that and get in some extra hits. And that's just about gonna do it. Since the Mawlek is almost constantly using one of these attacks and all 3 of them require different means of evasion, I don't really have a recommendation for resetting to neutral here. I think the most important advice I can offer is to know when to heal. I can practically guarantee that you're going to take a lot of damage on your first few attempts. But be frugal with your soul and heal only during the Double Slam. My last tip is to once again stay out of the corners. You want to give yourself as much time as possible to react to his Splat Volley attack. And if you're as far away from him as possible, you might not be able to clear the gap before the splats land. Now we've got a mighty foe before us. Let's take it down. The Brooding Mawlek. Oh, it has been a while. This was the 3rd boss we took on. By this point, you should be much more confident with your nail pogos. Even if you're not, you can actually pretty safely dodge, this attack with the Shade Cloak. It does take some more precise timing, and I still think just jumping over his mouth is a lot easier. But better yet, we now have access to the Descending Dark, which we can use to get in some nice cheeky damage after he does one of those attack, dodge whatever he does, and get out. Yikes. Wow, that was really close. All in all, not too different. He is a bit too wide to Shade Cloak through safely, I will say. Now, Brooding Mawlek is a bit of an odd duck. Just about every single boss in the entire game is going to get an increase in HP when you fight them on Ascended or Radiant compared to Attuned. Mawlek is an exception to that, and still has only 1050 HP. The big difference is, of course, ouch, the new arena here, and Mawlek is not constrained at all. Yikes. To the central platform, and that can make everything here quite a bit more difficult. Luckily for us, we do have the ability to Shade Cloak if they get too close to us. Let's go ahead and fight its Radiant form. And this is definitely the toughest one of the non-Oro and Mato set in that first Pantheon, which is probably the most qualified statement I've ever made about a boss's difficulty. But ultimately, there isn't too much that she can do to you if you are smart about your nail pogos and your Descending Darks. The fact that she doesn't get an HP boost over her attuned form, it's probably a bit of a disservice to her difficulty. But that one's that.
Hey, thanks for watching Boss Blitz. As always, I recommend checking out the playlist on the left if you want context for all the rematches shown in the back half of the video. But with that, the first area of Hollow Knight is down. Let's move on to Green Path and take on the Vengefly King.